Welcome to the silent heavy that no one really understands is as good as it is within World of Tanks console, and today's video is going to be showcasing the Object 277, how this vehicle can perform on World of Tanks, and of course you guys are going to be able to watch two fantastic replays within this video. So we've got one here on one of the more interesting maps, and we're going to see what this the Object 277 can do on a more on a map that necessarily isn't the best for a heavy tank, or at least isn't typically the best for a heavy tank, and this replay in particular is fantastic carry that I managed to pull off in the game, at least from my personal opinion. It may not be the super high damage game, it's not a 10k, I can tell you right now, but it is a really solid vehicle that I want to showcase how you can actually play this vehicle and similar vehicles, things like the T10, all of the Soviet heavy tanks that maybe are a little bit faster, but maybe they aren't always the heavily armoured tanks, something like the E100 or the Maus or something like that, where you rely upon your significant hull armour. Although this vehicle, to all intents and purposes, has pretty darn good hull armour, or at least bouncy hull armour. Now, you're not necessarily going to be easily bouncing a lot of rounds if someone has can actually aim in the game. If people auto-aim you, you can pull off quite a few bounces, and that's what I love about this vehicle. And one thing that you just saw there was actually that we managed to deal 500 damage, and that's because this vehicle has 490 alpha damage per shot, which is fantastic. I absolutely love the fact that this vehicle has the higher alpha damage, and especially when you compare that to the fact that this tank reloads super quick as well, makes it super fun to actually play. And we do get tracked on the move by the Progetto, and we managed to miss him, which is a bit annoying, but nonetheless we still kind of spot him at that point, and he takes a little bit of damage in return, so it's not the end of the world. But you definitely don't want to be trading like that all throughout the game. The 277 typically is a tank that gets better with time, so the longer you keep this vehicle in the fight, whilst also maintaining a fairly aggressive position, so you don't want to be the furthest forward, but you definitely want to be more of a support tank. Now, we're making a few decent misplays here at the beginning of the game, which is a little bit bad from my part, but it definitely gets better as we move forward, and you can see here we're starting to rack up the damage. We hit the T57, and from this position, it's kind of one of those that you don't want to stay here for the entire game. It's kind of one that when you don't really know what's going to happen with the game, this is a very good position to understand how the game is developing on this map, Dukla Pass, and then you can kind of decide upon what you want to do, what strategy you're going to take, which side is the kind of one that's failing, and then use the mobility of a tank like the Object 277 or some of the more mobile tanks to get into position and deal with the game as you see fit, depending on what's happening. Now, another thing that you're noticing here is that we're able to spot for ourselves, or at least spot a little bit with this vehicle, and that kind of tends itself because this vehicle is a little bit medium. I'm not going to be brash to say this is basically a medium. It's not, but it's definitely a vehicle that does slightly better at spotting than some of the other heavies, and that's why you're able to get assistance damage with it, and kind of why you want to be a bit more brawly with this thing to be able to spot opponents as well as get pure damage at the same time. So that's something I will always recommend when playing the Object 277. Now, this game is not looking particularly the best so far. We've only managed to pick up a 1300 damage, which by all intents and purposes is not particularly the best game. Make that 2000 just shy. And we really want to be pushing as high as possible in this matchup to be able to really make sure that we win the game. It's now 9-10. It's not looking like our team is particularly in the best spot. We're kind of crowded into one position. The enemies are kind of circling around us. And a lot of the opponents that are left alive, or at least on this flank, are on quite a lot of hit points, albeit the EBR 105 takes a nice hit by us there, which is lovely. Now, the Progetto 65, that's a pretty dangerous tank. It gets the 4-shot autoloader, I believe 360 damage per shell, and can be very dangerous if left kind of on its own. Now, we try and go for the shot on the T54, I believe it is, but we managed to miss it, which is really annoying. Could have done with him getting out. It's the T34-2 even, the Chinese tier 8 medium. Now, having done this amount of damage, I'm pretty disappointed at this point, and the game is coming to what seems to be a pretty, well, an end, and so we want to make sure that whatever we're doing in this point is going to secure us the victory, or at least kind of improve our chances of surviving. Now, we take a nice hit from the back chat, I believe, somewhere back there, and we actually managed to spot him. We place a nice round into him, but he hits us twice in return, which is a little bit annoying, but then again, you're not an autoloader in this thing. But once the back chat is out of rounds, that's when this tank can really dominate, and hopefully we'll see that later on as we move forward in this battle, because it's certainly not over. 8-7 is not a scoreboard that is necessarily too one-sided to the point where you're not going to be able to do anything. From this point, I'm deciding too many of us are actually sitting in one corner. I've had enough of sitting in the same position for the beginning of the game, and now it's time to move. Now it's time to spot for our team to potentially kind of surprise the opponents that might be over here, and then we can deal with them as we see fit. Now, it could go very badly with the point that as we go, we're going to get spotted or whatever, but we see that there is the EBR 105 who is over there. He goes for the shot on us, but we managed to dodge it there, which was pretty lucky. I'm going towards him. I should have potentially gone round that rock, because that would have avoided anyone coming from behind us and potentially getting a shot into us. Now, we do realise that there is someone sat behind us. It is not the tank you want to be seeing, it's the back chat. Now, what you'll see me doing here is giving him the side of my tank. Not necessarily the broad side, we want to angle the side as much as possible. And that is predominantly because what we want to do is make sure that we can kind of we can land the shells on him. The EBR hits us on the move, which is annoying, and puts us on 414 hit points, which makes us potentially a one-shot for almost everything left in the game, which is not ideal, especially when you've only done just over 1 damage core/received, which is not good. Nonetheless, we shut down the EBR 105, which was a nice one, and definitely one of the better things that we could have done in this replay. I'm worried about the Progetto. I didn't know if he was still over this side. I didn't know if he got taken out. I wasn't paying attention at the point in time, and I'm assuming that he actually tried to run away. Now, we get spotted, which I'm surprised about, which means that there's probably someone in front of me in a bush somewhere in the D1/2 or D3/4 area, or potentially there was someone behind me that was able to spot where this UDES 16 is and the T54. Now, in terms of what we need to do in this game is just to commit to something. We need to deal some damage in this game, really get our guns singing to be able to stop the opponents from just brawling us and basically ending up with a situation where we're all going to get taken out in one go. You see the T55 is over there, who's taking on our light tank, which is a bit unfortunate. We wait for our shot and we actually miss it, which is terrible. Really should have aimed that one a little bit better. But the UDES now coming up decides he's going to come up. He bounces off us and we do successfully land a shot. Of course, it being the shot that you probably shouldn't hit, you actually hit, and the one that you really wanted to hit didn't hit. But nonetheless, we'll take it. Now, 3,780 damage done. And of course, this would be an okay game. It would probably be an average game, I would say, for myself at tier 10 in a vehicle like this, which has decent DPM. So it's not necessarily the worst, it's not necessarily the best, and probably wouldn't be featured on YouTube if it ended up with this being the final result. But of course, it is showcased on YouTube, so that kind of gives you an indication as to what happens in this game. It's looking like it's a 3 versus 5 scenario, and we've got 2 tanks from behind us, 2 tanks in front of us. What are we going to do? It's a pincer maneuver, it's a typical pincer maneuver as well. And so we've got to deal with one side of the pincer to break free of that, and then we can deal with the game as we best see fit. So at this moment in time, I'm kind of waiting. I'm assuming that the FV is going to come up this hill and then take me out in the shot because he can splash me. But surprise, surprise, he's actually sat down there looking at the other Scorpion G. They weren't making an advance, and so actually in this we go for the FV 4005 and we make sure that we can secure the hill by over peaking that hills to ensure that we are going to hit. Now the Progetto does probably the silly thing and actually runs away rather than capitalising on the fact that we were reloading at this period in time. Now I go over to the left hand side since we saw that the projector was coming over here, and we are definitely not wanting to get squeaky bum timed from the back, so we're going to go over here, see what is around. Now there's a Leopard PTA, which is a tank that typically you would go after if I was in this vehicle, since you can ram it, you can deal damage to it just purely by shooting it, but unfortunately we can't do that in this game, and so we're having to be a little bit more passive. We don't know he could high roll us, so that's not particularly the nicest scenario. So we're not going to overcommit. We don't know what's going to happen with regards to our teammates, how they're going to fare, and if we need to support them in that area. So we're going to keep it a little bit cool. Now the UDES 16 is now progressing towards the SU-130 PM. We've got the T-55A. It's now a 4 versus 2. It's not looking good whatsoever. So we're going to have to be a little bit careful as to what we do in this replay. And so we're going to go forward after the UDES. Now we hope he bounces, which he successfully does. We land around into the lower plate of the UDES, which is nice. We go in then for the ram damage, because if we can get the ram off, we're going to be able to take him out, which now allows us to hit the Progetto 65, which we hit in the lower plate. He bounces off of us. That's one round gone out of his clip. Of course, the Progetto 65 being an auto reloader, and if we can finally land the last hit, which we successfully do, then that's job's a good. And then the Leopard PTA, now coming in from behind us, is now in a pretty bad scenario for us. So we need to make sure we get him out the game, and now it's a 1 versus 2 scenario for myself against both these tier 9 mediums. Now what are we going to do against this? You see that the Leopard is actually coming around, and in fact what we've got to do is use kind of something unexpected. We're going to use the ramp to actually push down, come at a weird angle and place the round into him. The T-55A there now is in a scenario where he needs to either push or remain in a defensive position. Now he doesn't manage to do that, so we're going to go after him, and we place a nice round, peeking, auto-aiming round the corner and secure it into the side of his vehicle, which is exactly what you want to do with this tank. It can definitely hit on the move. The Object 277 is really accurate for a heavy tank, and we managed to secure the victory, having 5 enemies destroyed and 6,037 damage done, 1,495 base experience, and picking up 50,000 silver as well, blocking 3,330 damage as well. And yeah, really great result. Let's move into the next one. The next replay we have on World of Tanks console is for the Object 277 on Hidden Village, and this is a map that is slightly more aggressive than the previous, which means that we can have some more close quarters combat and showcase what this vehicle can do in the right hands and with the right scenario coming into the game. So in this match we're going to go for the central area, or at least through the middle of the map, because that's typically where this vehicle will be best suited, because you can go in, you can deal your damage whilst also having some cover in between you and the opponents. You can't sit out with this vehicle, since you get found out pretty quickly and people start penning all your weak points, which predominantly are the kind of side of the upper plate and stuff like that, and it becomes less angled as you're looking. We managed to somehow outspot the M48A5 pattern, and we managed to track him at the same time, which is nice. And with a very, very quick reload, we're able to at least potentially get another shot off into him if we manage to hit him blind, but unfortunately we don't manage to do that. Regardless, we have managed to do 400 damage and 1500 assistance at the beginning of the game, which is very, very nice. We've got the majority of the enemy team who have pushed up into the central position, or at least the furthest left position in this kind of middle area of the map. You see that the Chisel makes the all-time mistake of trying to cross down from the hill, which ends up very well for him. We're not going to complain whatsoever, but he does take a nice round. We then go for the machine. I want to get at least one shot into the YOLO wagon that is the machine there, who for some reason is doing exactly what the previous tanks did, much like the E5 here, and they're getting paid what they're paying the price for it. Now then, the Type 5 Heavy is one we need to be careful of, because that thing will just pen you. The machine has obviously lost a few brain cells in his last bypass, and he comes back around in front of all of the opponents to actually shoot them, which I didn't quite understand, but nonetheless we're going to now progress ourselves into the central position. We actually get tracked by the enemy STA, I believe it was, and we actually get penned by the AMX, but nonetheless it doesn't really matter, because now we're in a very nice position. The the AMX gets punished by our friendly neighbourhood artillery piece, and of course that's what we love, and we get some extra assistance towards him. Bit of lag there, and we pen him through the side, and of course high rolling for 540, which is what we love even more. The mouse there is on the side of us, we place a round into him, albeit lagging, which is nice. 3,000 damage done already. The mouse is still looking at me. We try and then move back, and we put a nice round into him, and now it's time to deal with this AMX that was previously in front of us and now is behind us. So what we need to do is try and bait a shot from him, or at least get him to come around the corner into a more kind of a worse position for himself. If we can manage to do that, then we're going to be able to successfully deal with him. Now the Type 5 manages to still pen us. I tried to just give him the front at a really steep angle, but he still pens us because Type 5. The AMX now moving towards us. The enemy artillery piece thinks he's going to have a little blow, and then the AMX now comes right around and we shut him down for that hit right there. And now the Waffle, thinking he's almighty, is now coming around as well. It seems like they all can't get enough of me at this moment in time, and then we kind of shut him down. Now the Type 5 Heavy there is still looking our way. I'm not surprised, we're kind of the only tank he can probably hit. I'm kind of wary that he's going to be able to hit our engine deck. He then fires at us, and so now it's time to advance. The Type 5 Heavy we managed to hit on the move, because the slimmer the shot, the more chance of actually hitting apparently. And so now it's time to just progress towards him. You see he's kind of, the turret armour is getting less angled as we're going towards, which is nice, and we place a nice high rolling hit into him. And from this point it's just a case of finishing him off and progressing down towards this medium tank, who is on full health. It's the Type 61 that hit us earlier, albeit he is now probably on minuscule amounts of health, only 410 within this. We now go down after him, place a round into him, finishing him off. And then there's this tank destroyer over here, the Badger, who is just sat side onto us, so we can hit him on the move with this vehicle because of the good accuracy on the move, which means that we can shut him down as well. The Batchat 155-58 artillery piece is the last tank alive, or artillery piece, on the enemy team, and he gets shut down by the T95 FE4201, and that secures us the victory in this game, and of course picking up a very nice damage result in probably my favourite tier 10 heavy tank in the game, and why I absolutely love the Object 277. It is much like a heavy medium, and that's why I love it so much. And 5,508 damage done, 1,608 XP, 4 enemies taken out within this replay, which is superb, and we'll look at the result screen now. So here is the result screen: 5,508 damage, 2,364 assistance, mastery badge for that result, which is nice, and of course this is the sort of damage range that you'll need to get a mastery badge if you're thinking about getting one, but yeah, a really good result. And blocking 1,910 damage in this vehicle at the same time, which is lovely. Hopefully you did enjoy this video, but if you want to check out any more tier 10 gameplay and tank reviews much like this, then of course check out the gameplay and tank reviews playlist on the right hand side of the screen. Or if you want to look at some of the more interesting newest vehicles that were released as part of the season pass, then I will leave a link to one of them on the left hand side, and you can find them back in the channel not too far behind that. So hopefully you did enjoy once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.